Hey, welcome to FISM News. I'm Samuel Case.
And I'm Renata Kiss.
And tonight, Biden's new border policy takes effect.
Meanwhile, AG Merrick Garland testifies before Congress.
And the House votes to sanction the ICC. Well, as I just said, President Biden rolled out his plan to address the border crisis yesterday. Biden signed an executive order that temporarily shuts down the border once daily encounters reach 2,500. Here's Biden.
Today, I'm announcing actions to bar migrants who cross our southern border unlawfully from receiving asylum. Migrants will be restricted from receiving asylum at our southern border unless they seek it after entering through an established lawful process. And those who seek to come to the United States legally, for example, by making an appointment and coming to a port of entry, asylum will still be available to them.
The order went into effect immediately, meaning the southern border will remain closed until encounters drop below 1,500. The move is a reversal for Biden, who previously said he couldn't do anything about the border without congressional action.
That's not all I can do. Just give me the power. I've asked for the very day I got in office. Give me the border patrol. Give me the people, the judges. Give me the people who can stop this and make it work for us.
Now, questions remain how effective the policy will be. Millions of illegal immigrants have crossed the border during Biden's time in office. House Speaker Mike Johnson said if Biden was, quote, concerned about the border, he would have done this a long time ago. Meanwhile, legal challenges are already mounting. The ACLU, which blocked similar moves by President Trump, says a lawsuit is already in the works.
Meanwhile, the teen migrant who shot 2 NYPD officers on Monday is dismissed from court. 19-year-old Venezuelan migrant Bernardo Castro Mata shot one officer in the chest and another in the leg after the officers tried to pull him over for driving against traffic on a moped. The officers returned fire and shot Mata in the ankle. Following the incident, sources from ICE said that an immigration judge in Chicago has already closed his case. This happened right after the New York Post exposed the Biden administration dangerous catch and release policies. In the past 2 years, the Biden administration has granted mass amnesty to 350,000 illegal immigrants who had no criminal record or allegedly posed no danger to the public. Meanwhile, more and more ICE officers are reporting an increase in crime stemming from these illegal immigrants whose asylum cases are dismissed. One officer told the Post, quote, "It happens all the time."
And Attorney General Merrick Garland faced fresh scrutiny from congressional Republicans yesterday. FISM's Ian Patrick has more.
U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland on Tuesday sat before the House Judiciary Committee, where he fought against accusations of politicizing the criminal justice system. During his opening remarks, Garland defiantly said he would not be intimidated by mainly Republican lawmakers, whom he accused of pushing conspiracy theories against his department.
Certain members of this committee and the Oversight Committee are seeking contempt as a means of obtaining, for no legitimate purpose, sensitive law enforcement information that could harm the integrity of future investigations. This effort is only the most recent in a long line of attacks on the Justice Department's work. I will not be intimidated, and the Justice Department will not be intimidated. We will continue to do our jobs free from political influence, and we will not back down from defending democracy.
Republicans have long accused Garland of weaponizing the DOJ to pursue political opponents of President Joe Biden. In his opening statement, House Judiciary Chair Jim Jordan said that the American people are rightly skeptical of the DOJ's supposed neutrality.
So, Mr. Garland, we're glad you're here today. We've got lots of questions. Many Americans believe there's now a double standard in our justice system. They believe that because there is. And we're going to have lots of questions about that problem.
The multiple cases against former President Donald Trump lie at the heart of most of these concerns. Other Republicans pressed Garland on the issue with regards to Trump's recent conviction on 34 charges in New York. Florida Representative Matt Gaetz even accused Garland of, quote, advancing the conspiracy theory over which he expressed concern.
You come in here and you lodge this attack that it's a conspiracy theory, that there is coordinated lawfare against Trump. And then when we say, fine, just give us the documents, Give us the correspondence, and then if it's a conspiracy theory, that will be evident. But when you say, well, we'll take your request, and then we'll sort of work it through the DOJ's accommodation process, then you're actually advancing the very dangerous conspiracy theory that you're concerned about.
The accusations also extend into the border crisis. Many cases have emerged lately of Americans tragically being killed by illegal immigrants after they unlawfully entered the United States. This includes the national case of the late Georgian student, Laken Riley. Texas has issued laws to try and secure its borders with Mexico, saying the federal government is not doing its job. During the hearing, Texas Representative Chip Roy pressed Garland on that issue and why the DOJ has decided to go after Texas for its laws.
The way to stop people like this from coming into the United States is to give more resources to the Border Patrol so that they can prevent...
Mr. Attorney General, no.
You don't want
we the people of Texas, money's not going to solve the problem when the Department of Homeland Security and the President of the United States refuse to enforce the law. And the Department of Justice is suing the state of Texas in court, taking valuable resources to go against the people of Texas when Texas simply wants to say that we should have a say in stopping people who are illegally, arrest them, and be able to deal with that on our own terms.
Meanwhile, Democrats took Garland's side and mainly accused Republicans of wasting time on their own conspiracies. This was particularly expressed by Ranking Member Gerald Nadler during his opening remarks.
These Republicans don't care what's in the interest of the American people. They just care about getting their favorite felon back in the White House. General Garland, thank you for being here today. I apologize in advance for the wild conspiracies and lies that will be told about you today.
This is Ian Patrick reporting for FISM News.
Thanks for that report, Ian. Meanwhile, Democrat fundraisers are demanding jail time for Trump, but the GOP warns not so fast. According to Town Hall, Democrat fundraising website ActBlue is demanding Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg and Judge Juan Merchan to recommend the former president jail time. An email by the organization called Jurors Against Trump said, quote, "As jurors, we are outraged by Donald Trump's relentless attacks on the people who make up our criminal justice system, including prosecutors, judges, clerks, witnesses, and jurors like all of us." But Republicans are saying that the desperate Democrat effort to beat Donald Trump with the judicial system is dangerous. Here's House Speaker Mike Johnson saying just that.
When you have activist prosecutors and the Democratic Party who are so desperate because of the presidential campaign and the way it's going, they understand that Donald Trump, all the polling shows, is crushing Joe Biden. They're in panic mode, and they're so desperate to stop him that they are willing to use the judicial system to do so. It is a new low, and it's a dangerous one, because what they're doing is they're eroding the people's faith in our system of justice itself.
Republican senators are also saying that should Trump's campaign be undermined by partisan efforts, it could impact voter confidence in the 2024 elections.
That is a really real risk indeed. Elsewhere, Wisconsin's Attorney General is going after 3 former Trump campaign associates as AG Josh Kaul is charging them over a plan to submit an alternative slate of Wisconsin electors in the 2020 presidential election. All 3 of them are facing 1 count of felony forgery charges for allegedly misrepresenting the alternatives as an officially approved list. They allegedly hope to replicate this plan in 6 more states as well. And this plan is also a key component of the criminal case against former President Donald Trump by special counsel Jack Smith.
And last night, voters in Montana and New Jersey made their voices heard in their state primary elections. In Montana, Trump-endorsed state auditor Troy Downing won his crowded primary to replace outgoing Representative Matt Rosendale. Downing easily defeated former Representative Denny Rehberg to secure the Republican nomination. Meanwhile, Trump-endorsed candidate Tim Sheehy won the Republican nomination to run for the state's U.S. Senate seat and will face Senator John Tester in the general election. In New Jersey, Congressman Andy Kim defeated challengers to win the Democratic nomination for U.S. Senate. He will face Republican candidate Curtis Bashaw and incumbent Senator Bob Menendez. Menendez will run as an independent candidate following his recent legal challenges related to alleged bribery. And we'll get into international news when we come back from this break.
There are moments in life that define us. Choices determine the courses we take. Choices that create life, or those that save a life. And some make life worthwhile. There are decisions to stay or to go, to remain the same or to grow. Sometimes we pray and make peace. Other times we take a stand for what we believe. In celebration, mourning, triumph, and defeat, we are invested in every decision we seek. Despite differences, we have one thing in common, the desire to do all for the glory of God. Keep your wallet aligned with your heart and your investments in harmony with your faith. Timothy Plan, biblically responsible mutual funds, ETFs, and retirement plans. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing.
Do you know what you are supporting when you purchase mutual funds and stocks? Think about it. When you invest in a company, you make a decision to support the things that that company supports. And it may not be things that you agree with. Financial Issues is a ministry teaching people like you how to invest biblically, responsibly, keeping your investments clear of companies that may support an ungodly agenda. Learn more by going to financialissues.org. Financialissues.org.
But I felt very comfortable in that decision because I found a lot of support. Like everyone here, always made sure, keep in contact with me. This is what ultimately changed my decision, knowing that I had all this support that I didn't know I had. Now that he's here, he's 4 months old, I look at him and I honestly, it just makes me want to cry,
And welcome back to FISM News. I'm Renata Kiss. Well, we're still in politics here for a little bit. The House passed a resolution yesterday to impose sanctions on the International Criminal Court. The Illegitimate Court Counteraction Act was introduced by Representative Chip Roy and was hailed as a major Republican-led victory in the House. The resolution passed 247 to 155, including 42 Democrats voting alongside 205 Republicans. Here's New York Representative Elise Stefanik commenting on the bill.
At every opportunity, Joe Biden has turned his back on Israel, most recently refusing to sanction the International Criminal Court following their politically motivated targeting of Israeli Prime Minister Bibi Netanyahu. The ICC must be immediately sanctioned to ensure needed guardrails to protect Israel and all our allies from baseless, undemocratic attacks by the international bureaucrats of this illegitimate court.
The sanction would specifically block the ICC from actions to investigate, arrest, detain, or prosecute any protected person of the United States and its allies. But the resolution may not progress further in the Senate, where the Democratic leadership will likely ignore it.
And as the war in Gaza winds down, Israel is now setting its sights to its north. Yesterday, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu announced Israel is preparing military actions against Hezbollah in Lebanon.
Anyone who thinks that he can harm us and that we shall sit idly is making a major mistake. We are prepared for a very intense operation in the north. One way or another, we will restore security to the north.
Now, Israel has been trading near daily rocket fire along its northern border since the start of the war in Gaza. Israeli communities there have been evacuated as a result. This week, Hezbollah rockets set off massive wildfires, burning hundreds of acres in the northern part of Israel. Israel now says it's close to deciding on what actions it will take, with the IDF saying it's ready for an attack.
Meanwhile, Ukraine reportedly used U.S. weapons to strike a long-range missile system inside Russia on Monday. Videos and images on social media appear to show a destroyed missile system in Belgorod, about 30 miles north of the border. Both Russian and Ukrainian media say the attack was carried out with HIMARS. However, this has not been confirmed by Ukraine or the U.S. It comes days after the Biden administration approved Ukraine's use of U.S. weapons on Russian soil. Russia's top diplomat warned there would be fatal consequences if U.S.-supplied weapons were used on targets within the country.
And in related news, NATO is now mapping out a plan to rapidly deploy U.S. troops to the front lines in the event of a full-scale war with Russia. According to The Telegraph, the alliance is planning routes to Russian-American troops across northern Europe, and this follows an agreement by NATO leaders last year to keep roughly 300,000 troops at high readiness in case Russia decides to attack a member state. European leaders are facing increased urgency to complete the plans, as Norway's chief of defense said on Sunday that there are only 2 or 3 years left to prepare for war with Russia.
Meanwhile, Taliban authorities cracked down on some of the most vulnerable on Sunday, leaving hundreds of families homeless. According to the Norwegian Refugee Council, authorities in the capital city of Kabul forced the eviction of 6,000 internally displaced people. Those people already struggle to meet their basic needs. Now the organization says 800 families have no place to go following the destruction of their informal homes. It's the third mass eviction the group has documented in Kabul since the Taliban takeover in August 2021. By the end of 2023, around 4.2 million people in Afghanistan were displaced because of violence. An additional 1.5 million have lost their homes because of disasters.
And in Asia, Christian persecution in China is now spreading to Hong Kong as well. Persecution watchdog Release International shared a report this week saying Christian persecution is at its worst levels since Mao's Cultural Revolution in the 1960s. The report comes on the 35th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre in Beijing. That was a brutal government crackdown on pro-democracy protests that has also led to a rise in persecution. The threat of persecution, as I said, is now spreading, as in Hong Kong, new national security laws there have been increasingly targeting religious freedom. One of those laws specifically forces Catholic priests, for example, to report so-called treasonous crimes that they hear during confession. Release International is now calling on the international community to wake up to the rising persecution in China, saying, quote, "This threat against Christians goes beyond their national borders." All right, and coming up, we have plenty more news, including in the culture and so much more. But first, let's go to Seth Udinsky for today's A Moment in History.
Welcome back to A Moment in History. I'm Seth Udinsky. There are many fairy tales from the pages of history, as you well know, but the reality is, and we cannot miss this, many of these fairy tales are either based in truth or, believe it or not, many of them actually really happened. Let's consider this fact as we explore a tragic tale from medieval Germany, a tale that has given credence for the legend behind the mythical Pied Piper, a sinister fellow who is known in the old stories for luring local children to their doom with his beautiful music. There's ample evidence that this may have really happened in the little town of Hamelin, Germany, more than 700 years ago. Now, Hamelin sits in central Germany on the river Weser. It is a medieval town with a long history, but on the map of Europe, it would be largely forgotten, truthfully, if not for the fateful event that likely transpired there in the year 1284 AD. That year, a rat infestation infected the entire town. Now, in the Middle Ages, this would have been devastating for the townsfolk, as disease was rampant, food supplies were low, and rats were relatively dangerous creatures. By chance meeting, a colorfully dressed stranger, a musician who was skilled on the pipe, arrived in the town one day and noticed the problem. He went to the town mayor and proposed an offer. For 1,000 guilders, and guilders are gold coins that served as the currency of the Holy Roman Empire at the time, the Pied Piper offered to lure the rats into the river with his enchanting tune. The mayor agreed, and the piper worked his magic on the flute, luring all the rats to their doom and saving the town. But as the legend goes, the mayor was not the least bit appreciative. Thinking that he had been tricked and possibly caught in a trap with such a hefty sum of money that he now owed to a stranger, he blamed the rat problem initially on the piper and alleged that the piper had trained them in order to swindle the town. So he offered a meager 50 guilders instead, and the piper angrily refused, ominously vowing to get his revenge on the town. Well, that revenge came later that year on the feast day of Saints John and Paul. While all the adults were still in the local town chapel for Mass, the children were playing in the town square. There the piper returned, now dressed in the green garb of a woodland huntsman. He whipped out his pipe and began to play, putting all the children in the square into a trance. The children followed the piper out of the town and disappeared, never to be seen again. The Pied Piper had, by all likelihood, led the children to their deaths to get his revenge on the town. 130 Hamlin children vanished that day, which actually accounted for almost all the children in the city save for 3. A blind child who could not see the piper, a deaf child who could not hear the tune, and a lame child who, despite being entranced, could not follow. When the lame child awoke from his stupor, he broke the bad news to the adults, who then frantically searched for many days but could never find a trace of their lost children. To this day in Hamlin, there are many historical markers that are memorializing that fateful day. And in the modern town square where the children were last seen over 700 years ago, it is still forbidden to this day to play any kind of music. Thanks so much for joining me once again for A Moment in History.
Through the Ministry of Preborn, the Financial Issues family has saved tens of thousands of lives of babies. What an amazing job that God has done through you, the Financial Issues family. Would you join us in saving the lives of babies? What an amazing reunion we will have in glory, meeting all the people that we have saved. Please go to preborn.org, that is preborn.org, or financialissues.org, and click on the Preborn banner.
If investing with biblical values is important to you, you're not alone. Millions of people invest their money according to their personal beliefs. That's why we offer a subscription service that gives you access to biblically responsible stocks, buys and sells, and a portfolio tracker tool that tracks your asset allocations. Being a Financial Issues partner is the best way to ensure your investments reflect your values. At Financial Issues, we believe in providing our partners with the best possible information and resources so they can make informed decisions about their money. With our help, you can feel confident that your investments are in line with your personal beliefs. Gain access to our biblically based stock buys and sells for only $132 per year. Invest biblically, responsibly. Go to financialissues.org and become a partner today. That's financialissues.org.
And welcome back to FISM News. I'm Samuel Case. We begin with this rather interesting update here. That is lead COVID policymaker Dr. Deborah Birx. She admitted this week there was actually an effort to quash the theory that the pandemic came from a lab in Wuhan. She made that admission on CNN yesterday. Take a look.
I do think it happened. I think people were, if you look at what people said about Bob Redfield and how they disparaged him as a scientist because he wanted to bring forward the lab leak potential. And I think the reason he felt he needed to bring it forward was to push against this, it had to be this way, because we didn't know. And we knew we would never know. I mean, we knew with SARS that China was not transparent. We knew with the second SARS, China was not transparent. So we were not going to get an answer, but that shouldn't have held us back.
Now, you just heard her reference former CDC Director Robert Redfield. He was one of the most vocal advocates of the lab leak theory. Redfield said he was sidelined for those views.
In early to mid-January, I did have multiple calls with Fauci, Farrar, and Tedros about how important I thought it was that science get engaged in aggressively pursuing both hypotheses. It was told to me that they wanted a single narrative and that I obviously had a different point of view.
Now, Dr. Anthony Fauci has denied Redfield was excluded in any way, and this week he also testified before Congress where he denied any attempt to downplay the lab leak theory.
Do you agree that there was a push to downplay the lab leak theory?
Not on my part.
Really?
Really?
Wow.
Wow.
I think most of the country would find that amazing. I still got 11 seconds.
Well, look at the facts. I've kept an open mind throughout the entire process.
Meanwhile, Democrats are forcing Republican votes on reproductive rights ahead of the elections. House Democrats are forcing a vote on the Right to Contraception Act, which seeks to protect all forms of birth control, including drugs for emergency contraception, such as Plan B, and other vague contraceptive methods. Democrats believe that reproductive policies will be one of the major issues in the November elections, so they are trying to position Republicans in a negative light. If Republicans refuse the legislation, Democrats argue that that conservative lawmakers are indeed extreme. Here's Democrat Senator Elizabeth Warren speaking on the law.
It's time we codify the right to contraception into law. I am furious that millions of women have lost fundamental rights. I am furious that their freedom to make their own decisions has been taken away by a small number of extremists. I am alarmed by what the extremist Supreme Court and congressional Republicans are prepared to do to unravel a future of protection for women under a Republican presidency.
All of this just comes ahead of the anniversary of conservatives overturning Roe v. Wade, which returned power to the states to regulate abortions.
And in some somewhat related news here, the Southern Baptist Convention is officially coming out against IVF as it becomes an increasingly fraught political issue. Last week, the SBC's top ethicist asked lawmakers to regulate the practice. This comes as the denomination believes life begins at conception and because of this takes issues with the indefinite freezing of or destruction of unused embryos, practices common in the IVF process. And while the SBC has stopped short of calling the process a sin, they do say it is morally ambiguous and, quote, problematic. And as a result, they are urging Christians to avoid the practice altogether.
Meanwhile, voucher programs for schools show increased funding for private Christian schools. According to the Washington Post, school choice programs can cover up to $16,000 per student per year for education outside the public school system. Many of these programs completely cover tuition for students who attend these schools. The Washington Post says that over 700,000 students across 5 states benefited from these programs this school year. A school choice advocacy group called At Choice added another 200,000 private school students benefiting from government aid in the country. The problem for liberal critics is that many times these students end up choosing religious schools. In states like Ohio and Wisconsin, over 90% of students who receive government funding are enrolled at a private religious school. In Florida, 82% of students attend these schools. Meanwhile, Executive Director of the Catholic Conference of Ohio, Brian Hickey, said, quote, "It's their parents' money to use as they see is best. We don't necessarily see it as taxpayer money."
And before we end our show today, World War II veterans are flocking to Normandy this week to honor the 80th anniversary of the D-Day invasion that, of course, was pivotal in the Allied victory over the Nazis. Veterans from the U.S., Britain, and Canada began arriving over the weekend, many of them over 100 years old.
Oh, it's mixed emotions, yes, but I'm glad I survived it, and I'm glad we won the war.
I've been here quite a few times since the invasion, and every time I come back, I get closer to the people.
The official anniversary takes place tomorrow. That'll be June 6th. Leaders from all around the world will attend, including German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, and of course, President Joe Biden. It is truly incredible that we still have people from that generation to come and honor this 80th anniversary.
Right, they're walking history, really.
It's truly incredible.
All right, well, that's our program for today. Thank you so much for joining us, and please visit FISMnews.tv for more content.
And for more updates until our next show tomorrow, be sure to follow us on social media. We're at FISM News on all the major platforms, or you can also download our FISM app. Thanks so much, God bless, and we'll catch you next time with more news coverage.